Hello and welcome. This is Joe Watkins and Bonnie Schmidt with Bravo Group Property Management coming to you again with part number 2 of evictions. This particular segment is going to talk about the process in the state of Georgia, the basic process for filing an eviction and what to expect. And Bonnie is our expert, so she's going to kind of lead the way. So Bonnie, let's just start with a basic outline and go into little details about that process.
Okay. So in Georgia, we do have some laws to follow when it comes to getting possession of a property. We can't just kick them out. We can't turn the utilities off. We do have to follow the court process. And the first thing that we would do is to make sure that we are following the terms of the lease, right. That we're giving them notice to vacate the premises in a certain amount of time. That notice doesn't have to be in writing, but it should be. We would mail it, also by email. We can tack it on the door, but we need to make sure that they've received the notice.
Is this a demand? This is the 3-day letter?
It is. So okay. We're demanding possession of the property. That's our first step. So we're giving them the option to voluntarily give us the property.
Gotcha.
For non-payment or for whatever reason they have expired the lease or terminated for one reason or another.
And they don't voluntarily give up the property. Next step is to do what?
Right. So we would give them a certain amount of time, and when we find out they're still there, we'd confirm that and then file for the possession through the court. And that is under oath at the courthouse. We file as landlord to tenant, make sure it includes the address, details of the property, why we're filing. If we're filing for a money judgment, they owe rent. We would also include that rent amount in there. You can include the court fee as well in that.
And that's also called the Dispossessed Refiling?
It is. So It's called a Dispossessed Refiling under oath.
Okay, and that's filed with the local municipality or county system. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
So we file the dispossessory. What happens next?
So after we file, the court would actually serve that tenant with a tack and mail, same as our 3-day notice that we would do. So they would tack one on the door, and they also mail them what we have submitted to them.
And that's the court's official notification.
Correct.
That the eviction process is starting.
Mm-hmm. And the tenant receives that notification, and after that, then they would have a 7-day time frame to respond, not to us, but to the court.
Okay.
So that service would go back to the courthouse. And if they do file that answer, we would then receive a court date. In the event they don't file the answer, then we have the right to file for what is called a writ of possession. And in Georgia, a writ of possession is required to get possession back of the property unless the tenant returns the keys to us.
Okay, so and that's if they do not answer. Essentially, the landlord is able to get possession of that property more quickly through the writ of possession. If they do answer, what happens?
So if they do answer, we would get a court date, and the landlord would go, us, Bravo, would go, and the tenant would come to court. Basically, it gives them the opportunity to be heard with the judge. As I said before in the last video, there's really not a legal defense for not paying rent. If you don't pay, you don't stay. But the judge does give the tenant the opportunity to tell them why they haven't paid or why they don't think that the lease should terminate.
Right.
In my experience, I have never seen a judge not give possession to a landlord when a tenant wasn't paying. Now, one thing that can happen is you can sign what they call a consent order. If the tenant wants to stay and you want to accept the rent, right. you can lay out a payment plan, and it has specific dates.
And that prevents the full formal eviction from going through, which is helpful for both parties if possible.
Right.
So if in court the judge rules in your favor to take possession of the property, what's the next steps?
So at that time, the tenant is typically given 7 days to leave the property once we've been given that judgment. In that 7 days, if the landlord wants to accept the money that's owed and let them stay, you're allowed to do that. Okay. Otherwise, you can go through with the process. In the 7 days, the tenant would have to leave by the 7th day. Now, if they don't leave, that's when we would then file the writ of possession as before. When they didn't do the answer, it's the same.
Same thing.
We still have to, that still has to be filed and signed by the judge. And once it's received with our marshal's office, and our marshal's office is who we contact to actually complete an eviction for us.
Right. They're the ones that's going to come out and actually do what the next step is, which is the set out.
Correct. So we cannot set out a tenant unless the marshal is present, unless the tenant has given us the keys and said, everything in the property, I don't want it, it's trash, or I can't come and get it, or whatever. So at that time, the marshal would come out, and they usually give us a scheduled date and time.
Right.
We come out with a crew. They require a crew. Sometimes it's 4 up to 6, depending on the county. We would all come out, and if we don't have a key, the marshal will allow us to drill the lock, which means basically we're taking
And the purpose of this whole process is to secure the property.
Correct.
Change the keys and remove all personal belongings from the property.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, they have 24 hours, and all those belongings, by the way, have to be put on the street in the state of Georgia for 24 hours.
That's right. So our crew of 4 to 6 would put everything on the curb and secure the property. And at that time, that tenant, it cannot go back in the property.
Right. It's officially been taken by the landlord. They have 24 hours to pick up their personal belongings from the street. If not, in the state of Georgia, it is the responsibility of the landlord to then send the crew back out to remove the stuff off the street, put it in the dump wherever it needs to go.
Right.
And now we have possession. So that obviously is a process we don't want to go through completely all the time. It is a lengthy process. Bravo Group has handled a lot of cases over the years. We have a lot of experience, and we can help you with the eviction because oftentimes, and Bonnie's great at this, she's able to deal with maybe getting a consent from somebody ahead of time to do certain things to end peacefully, which is best for all parties. Guys, thanks for visiting Bravo Group Property Management's video blog today about evictions, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.